Well, greetings, Mammoth Nation, and welcome to the Clean Hits Hockey Podcast. We've got a lot to cover today. It has been an eventful, emotional roller coaster over the last couple of weeks for Utah Mammoth fans, and man, we can't wait to dig into it. So I'm joined, Trent, your host today, filling in for Brad. I'm joined by Clean Hits Kenny and Clean Hits Corey, all the way from Toronto, finally emerging from his post-baseball season hibernation. He's dried his tears, finally. He's emerged from his den, and he's ready to talk hockey. Corey, how the heck have you been, man?
Yeah, still kind of. I don't think we're over that Blue Jays loss yet, but free agency's coming up. We'll load up the team and we'll go into next year. And then, as far as like Toronto, snowed for the first time this year a couple of weeks ago, or maybe a week or two ago. It's gone now, but it's still, it's a lot like the Mammoth lately, just cold and shitty.
It's actually raining here in Phoenix, so it's matching the mood of us lingering Mammoth fans who stuck with the team. The skies have opened, and we're getting some rain finally here, which is nice considering what's happened to the water rate hikes here in the valley over the last few years. This rainfall is going to save me about $50-$60 on my monthly bill at this point, so I'm pretty excited for it. How about you, Kenny? You're not flooding again, are you, out in Queen Creek?
It's funny you say that. We're not flooding due to a water main break, but the aftermath of the water main break has made itself very apparent with the amount of rain that we've gotten. It's like I've got 3 pools in my backyard now, which is pretty sick. And I do want to say that I myself have fully gotten over the Toronto Blue Jays loss. It was much easier for me than it was for Corey, but I all jokes aside, man, we kind of barbed Corey before he got on here, but I'm glad
I want to
Corey's
rematch next October.
Yeah, I do too. I would love that. And I honestly think that the Blue Jays are going to be something scary. So I hate to see my bud disappointed, but speaking of disappointment, we've got another team to talk about that hasn't really been giving us the warm and fuzzies lately. And,
Corey may be radicalized against the Golden State at this point. California's really just been kicking your ass personally up and down the street lately, Corey.
But you know what? It is an interesting change of pace to be. I mean, the Dodgers had the number 1 payroll, but the Blue Jays are like 5th. So it's so odd to cheer for a team who has a huge payroll when, Arizona for years it's like that Moneyball thing where you got to buy your own Coke in the Coke machine.
Wasn't that
Coyotes,
true though? Yeah, that's right.
The coffee machine,
the coffee. It was ridiculous. Oh man.
The infusion of budget and ownership investments and investment into hockey operations, payroll, and everything else looked through the first 10 games of this season like it was really, really working wonders for the team. And then suddenly we hit the skids and things have been a lot more difficult. So we're going to dive into that in a little bit more detail here, but just to kind of recap some of what's gone on since the last time we connected for a post game. The team played some back-to-backs in California this week to similar, though mixed results. There was a game against the Ducks where Utah outplayed them for most of the game, save for a few bad blunders that ended up sort of costing them a point. They should have had 2. They ended up with 1. Then the next night in San Jose, they started slow. Took a very long time to get into that game. There were many mistakes all around. They finally came out of their shell a little bit when JJ Peterka kind of threw him on his back and willed them into overtime, where we were quickly dispatched due to some really unfortunate events. Yeah, there in overtime. And we ended up with a point that felt like we kind of stole that point a little bit to some extent, despite some of the circus environment moments of that game. So we ended up with 2 points in those 2 games. Not as much as we hoped, but maybe more than we feared. But it feels like emotionally we should have earned at least one more out of those two, because they feel like a couple of games that really took a toll. Did you guys catch both of them? What were your thoughts on some of what we saw over the last couple of days?
Well, just watching the video here, Clayton Keller just changed his shift there in overtime. Finally.
Yeah. Finally got off the ice. I ended up only being able to catch the last period. I was at the not at the bar. I was working at the bar last night and decided to throw on the game. And man, I saw that coming from a mile away. Right? I mean, Coach Trent, I know you saw that too when you saw him, because leading up to that play, he was on a breakaway, and I think that there could have been a chance that there was a penalty called on that. And then watching the replay, like I forgot who it was, but they did primarily play the stick more than Keller's body. But I do feel like there was slight interference. And then on top of that, Askarov comes out and bodies Keller. And he pushes. That's interference. If we bumped into their goalie, that would be goaltender interference all day. Right. But Askarov comes out and pushes Keller. So I can tell that he was frustrated for sure.
Yes.
But as soon as I saw him sulking and not even striding to the bench, the hockey player in me, and I know the coach and you, Trent, and Corey, I'm sure you've dealt with this in your lifetime too. Get your ass moving. This is overtime. It's little room for mistakes. It's 3-on-3 hockey. You bust your ass. The hardest you skate. One of my favorite coaches always told me the hardest I want to see you skate in the shift is when you're changing, when you're coming back to the bench, because we got to get fresh legs out there. And I saw him sulk, and I don't know why. I was like, this is not good. This is not good. And then boom, it was disastrous. And I was really disappointed. And I've been a Keller fan since he was drafted. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes, but that's a big one in a must-win game. You have to lead by example, and sulking your way back to the bench is which it's just inexcusable.
But we've seen what happens when Clayton Keller's faced with adversity. He tends to respond with great intensity and to great effect. We saw last season the Four Nations snub and him sticking it to Bill Guerin. I'm hoping that he, after a bit of a sleepless night last night, and looking back on what was a very unfortunate end of the game, he comes back motivated and laser focused and hell bent on making it up. And I have no doubt that he will. He's a great player and a good captain, and I'm really excited to see how Clayton Keller responds to this.
Yes, love you, Kels. No offense. You're not going to see this anyway, but love you, buddy.
Yeah, no, I think this team's got a lot of problems right now, and where Clayton Keller is on that list is near the bottom.
Yeah. I would say the bottom.
That's right.
Honestly. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about what's gone on with the team to date, right? We're at the 20-game mark. It's a good evaluation point. Through the first 10 games, the team was 8-2. That's 16 points they had in 10 games for a 0.75 points percentage and a plus 13 goal differential in just 10 games. Pretty solid. The last 10 games, however, they've dropped to 2-5-3, getting only 7 points in these 10 games, less than half. And they have a 0.35 points percentage and a negative 12 goal differential. Yeah. So in the Western Conference, they're one of only 7 teams with a positive goal differential, but they're barely clinging on to that thing with a +1. So it's been the tale of 2 segments here. We had our first 10 and our second 10. We were sky high, and now we're feeling a bit rock bottom here. There's, as you mentioned, Corey, a laundry list of reasons we can get into for why that might be, why the team is facing this adversity. It's not on the back of major injuries or external factors like we've seen in the past. It's largely the same group that was overperforming that's now underperforming without any major changes that you can point to that are out of the team's control. So, Corey, you said on your list, Keller was towards the bottom. I tend to agree with that. Seeing online, there's been a lot of chatter about frustrations on a variety of different fronts, whether that's coaching, goaltending, the power play, a mixture of both, execution, discipline, preparedness, a whole laundry list of factors. What's one thing that stands out to you that we may be able to unpack in search of answers for why the team has struggled so badly over the last 10 games?
I think our biggest issue is our lines are disjointed because we don't have a second line center. I think this season it's becoming a season of answering questions, and one of them is Barrett Hayton a second line center or better? And I don't think he is. I think he has some nice chemistry with Keller and Schmaltz, and that's where he needs to be. So he needs to get back on that line in place of Logan Cooley. But I think we're getting killed right now because we don't have a second line center, and that's throwing off the rest of the lineup. Barrett Hayton has, I think, 4 points. Jack McBain is about the same. Kevin Stenlund is a great 4 center. He shouldn't be anything more than that. He should not be on the power play. We're getting killed because we don't have a second line center, and it's throwing off the rest of the lineup. I think that's our biggest problem right now.
Yeah, talk about a tale of 2 contract years, right? You've got on the one hand Nick Schmaltz, whose contract is up at the end of the season, and he's leading the team in scoring. He's toward the top of the league in scoring. He's absolutely on fire. And then you have Barrett Hayton, who did have an injury to start the season, and has quite honestly looked really slow out there. We're used to seeing him being a blood and guts player in the mix, in the trenches, getting on teams' nerves, crashing the net, wreaking havoc, and being a really good contrast to skilled players on his line, being the plumber and the worker on those lines. I've noticed a lot less of the work boot stuff. I've noticed a lot less of the blood and guts stuff. And what I've seen is a guy who's largely struggling to keep up with the pace of play on a team like this with line mates like the ones that he's had. He's had a few golden opportunities that he was slow to react and cash in on, and kind of flubbed those chances. I've seen some slow feet and some bad coverage and some bad reads. There was the moment last night on, I believe it was the first goal, where he was within an arm's length of both his winger and his defenseman covering the strong side and leaving the back door completely wide open for Macklin Celebrini, who was all alone, snuck in. And we didn't have our strong defensive center that we're accustomed to in Barrett Hayton covering the best player on the ice, one of the best players in the world, who was just chilling right there, back door on the weak side, wide open. And that was very frustrating for me to see from Hayton. So to your point, Corey, we're going to need to, if we're not going to be able to solve that problem externally, and good luck finding a 2C. I mean, every team in the league wants one. They're hard to come by, and you almost never get them anytime before the trade deadline. So we need to look for answers within, and I think those answers have got to be found with Barrett Hayton, because it's not going to be McBain, to your point. It's not going to be Stenlund, to your point. Our top prospect, who's making the strongest case for a call-up in Tucson, is a winger. Right. So I don't see the cavalry coming from anywhere else to solve this problem. I think Barrett Hayton's going to have to figure it out. What do you think, Kenny?
Well, in an ideal situation, yeah, Barrett Hayton does figure it out. But I'm starting to get to that point, and we talked about it earlier on in the season. He's a traditional slow starter, but this is becoming a trend. This is becoming a trend, and a trend I'm not comfortable with. And it's the reason why he keeps signing these little short bridge deals, because you see the potential and you see what you see a player that you feel can take that next step, but how many opportunities is he going to get to do that? And in such a crucial year, playoffs or bust, which the team has adopted, I'm starting to grow a little weary of that. So we talked about, second line centers don't grow on trees, but there are a couple candidates out there I'd start making phone calls on right now. I'd start calling Nashville about Ryan O'Reilly. I'd start calling Calgary about Nazem Kadri. Of course, I think Ryan O'Reilly is more attainable. I don't think he's got a no movement clause, even though they said that he, essentially does because they value him so much. But he's disappointed. I know a lot of those top end players on Nashville are disappointed with how the last season went and how this season is going so far. I'd start making calls to Barry Trotz right now and see what we can get. I mean, Ryan O'Reilly got 53 points last year, and he's a Selke winner, and he's a Cup winner, and someone that Bill Armstrong has familiarity with. And I think that while he's out of the age range that we're looking for at 34 years old, I'd still take a flyer on him. And even if that means shipping out somebody like Barrett Hayton for a Ryan O'Reilly or a Nazem Kadri, I think I'm on board with it now. I
think
and O'Reilly is signed to an affordable deal. He doesn't have trade protection. Even if he did, I mean, there are very few situations that aren't better than the one in Nashville anyway. So beggars and choosers there. It is early in the season, so not a lot of teams do have cap space, teams that would be higher on someone's list than Utah. So it's potential there for a fit. He is a little bit older, but he's famously a health nut. Has always been praised and celebrated for his non-traditional fitness practices and all the different things all the different tools he brings into his toolbox to stay healthy and stay in top shape. He's a cerebral player who's not dependent too much on his strength or speed or anything like that. So he has the look of a player that will age gracefully. He's so good defensively and so smart that I think that he probably is somebody who would do well moving down the depth chart as young centers come up. It can play a more specialized role lower in the line as he gets a bit older, and is regarded as a very good team leader and team first guy. So would probably be okay with that kind of thing. Additionally, his price tag is low enough that it wouldn't be inappropriate for him to slide down at his number. So go ahead, Corey.
I was going to say on Barrett Hayton, yeah, he is a notoriously slow starter. I think we saw 2 seasons in a row where he didn't get his first point or first goal till December, but I mean, we're a quarter way through the season here. And like you said, this is a critical year for him. Restricted free agent at the end of the year, I believe.
Yeah.
So let's say he finishes with 25 points. Are you re-signing him? And keep in mind, it's probably going to be minimum $5 million. Good comparable was Christian Dvorak last year. Philadelphia got $5 million, and he's kind of a 25, 35 point center. I don't want him back if he finishes with 25 points. I think he's a trade target at that point for an upgraded center.
I don't think so either. I don't know about you, Trent, but I think that if he finishes sub 40 points this season, I'll be disappointed because he hasn't shown enough as a two-way center so far. And 20 games is a good chunk of the season. And if this is what we're going to expect out of you year after year, and you've shown that in years past, I think it's time to call a spade a spade.
Yeah, I think even if he were to produce at a 40-point pace for the rest of the season, right? He's only got 4 points now, and there's only 62 games left. So if he puts up another 35 points in the remaining or another 31 points in the remaining 62 games, that leaves him with 35 points on the season. That's got to be about the best case scenario for him, I would think, is that he produces a half a point per game from here on out. And that leaves him at 35 points. So definitely not doing himself any favors from a contract perspective with a start this slow for this extended period of time. There are some other folks not doing themselves favors from a goodwill perspective. We've seen a lot of highly reactive, highly passionate responses to coaching online, both in our Discord and especially on X, where there's been a lot of frustrated fans targeting some of their frustrations on the coaching staff. You know, before I open the Andre Tourigny discussion here, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the supporting staff as far as the coaches are concerned. So Blaine Forsythe was brought in to help the face-off percentage and help the power play. When he was with the Washington Capitals, he was lauded for his ability to improve face-offs with the centers. If you read his bio on the team page, it cites the uptick in face-off efficiency of the teams he's coached in the past. Utah is currently ranked 26th, I believe, in face-off wins. And then his power play was highly celebrated as well because of how effective Washington's was under his tutelage. The concern or criticism with the hire at the time was, who's going to have a bad power play with Ovechkin on it, right? Yeah. And Backstrom for much of that time. And a lot of those high-powered power play weapons they have in Washington that we don't really have here in Utah, and certainly didn't have in Arizona at the time of the hire. I think Utah's power play is certainly a cause for concern. It's currently ranked 29th in power play percentage in the NHL.
That's awful.
So I think that, it's probably not a very comfortable position today for Blaine Forsythe as he's looking at the areas that the team needs to improve in. And a couple of those very obvious areas happen to be the areas that he oversees primarily. So having said that about Forsythe, he is on the staff of Bear Tourigny, who's in his 5th season in the NHL as a head coach, which makes him, what was it, Kenny? The 4th longest tenured head coach in the NHL?
Yes, the longest tenured coaches in the NHL right now. We've got John Cooper, multiple Stanley Cups, not a big deal. Jared Bednar, perennial playoff team, Stanley Cup. Rod Brindamore, sorry, Ron Brindamore. He's gonna beat me.
The bod,
Rod the bod, who no cups, but again perennial success in the regular season and in the playoffs. And then right after that, you got our good old boy Andre Tourigny, followed shortly by Martin St. Louis. So it is kind of crazy to see the top 4. One of them stands out a little bit.
He does. This is a league where coaches have a short shelf life. General managers under a hard salary cap have difficulty making big shakeups, and sometimes the easiest way to get a boost or to change things up is to replace a coach who, for the most part, they don't have the same kind of compensation level as like trading away a star player. It's a little bit easier to do. So I think fans kind of take their cues from management a little bit in this way. And when they start to get frustrated with a lack of progress or lack of results, they tend to look at the coach first as well. So that's a little bit of a chicken or the egg. Are managers looking at coaches because fans are, or fans looking at coaches because managers are? Ultimately not very important, because at the end of the day, coaches tend to last less than 5 years with a team. Andre Tourigny's in his 5th season. So there have been some cries online for his head. My stance is that Andre Tourigny is a guy who has shown progress in terms of results on ice each of the 5 years so far. So I didn't update these numbers after last night's overtime loss, but in his first season as a head coach, the team had 50 points. In his second season, they had 70, which was a improvement of 20, which is incredible. In his third season, they finished with 77. So that's just another 10% improvement there, which is pretty fantastic. And then in his 4th season, his first in Utah, they had 89 points, which is a 12-point uptick. And prior to last night's loss, the team was pacing for 95 points. I believe they're pacing for 94 now, which would be a 5-point improvement from last season. So what you're seeing is a coach that's getting an incremental improvement each season that he's at the helm, You're seeing a coach who's got young players developing well underneath him. I mean, Logan Cooley's first coach in the NHL was Bear Tourigny, and he just signed an $80 million ticket. Dylan Gunther's looking like a potential 40-goal scorer someday. He's been pretty cold. We'll talk about that later. JJ Peterka's come in and fit like a glove. You've seen Clayton Keller really take his game to the next level. We're seeing some improvement from the key core players and big pillars of the future under Andre Tourigny. And we've only played 20 games this season. So for me personally, while I can see why the chair would be warming up a bit, if for no other reason than just how long he's been with the team already, I'm preaching a little bit of patience from my side for a variety of different reasons, both Bear's body of work as well as some external reasons. But I'm curious, now that I've talked for 5 straight minutes, what are your thoughts, Corey? What is your first impulse to when you see the online criticism of Bear and some of the more passionate takes criticizing his work?
Yeah, well, we are coming to a critical point with Tourigny, right? Because he's got 1 year left on his contract after this year. So next season he would enter as a lame duck, and that just typically doesn't happen in the NHL, right? So there'd have to be a decision at that point if you're going to make a change or if you're going to extend him. And if you're going to extend him, in my mind, that might depend on if you make the playoffs or not. And I'm not a big fan of, well, what if you miss the playoffs by a point? Does he still get extended? We kind of entered this season with, I mean, Bill even said it himself, playoff or bust. So in my mind, I think you have to at least be open to it, and not even at the end of the season, but now, can you still salvage this season? We're still in the mix, but we're a quarter of the way through. We're probably not the team that went 7-0, but we're probably not the team that's in this current streak. We're probably somewhere in the middle of that.
Right.
But seeing a lot of ugly trends lately. I don't particularly like the way that we play. We either have a strong first period, and the second period has been awful probably since that last season in Arizona, or we start slow. We don't get enough shots. Like, of our 20 games, I would say less than half we've outshot the opposition. Like you said, the power play is not good. I'm going to need some further explanation on why Kevin Stenlund got even close to the power play. I have a lot of grievances right now, so I would at least be open to considering a coaching change. Like you said, 2-5-3 in our last 10, 0 wins against teams that aren't the bottom of the Eastern Conference, Buffalo Sabres. That's a little concerning. And that second game against Buffalo, we only really had a good third period, and we're able to win off of that, right? Because Buffalo was just so terrible. So I think you have to be open to the possibility of a change for sure.
Yeah. I'm kind of right in the middle of you guys. Trent, you brought up a good point. Of the steady incremental improvements that we're seeing year after year. I didn't realize it was that black and white. So it does make sense why management, especially Bill Armstrong, believes in him. This is a coach that's also been through a lot and has stood by his players, had a pretty aggressive verbal altercation with the previous ownership group in regards to how his players were being treated. It looks like he's loved in the locker room. That means a lot too, especially when you've got young blossoming players that it is their first coach. I remember Patrick Kane cried when I think it was his first or second season in the league when his first coach was fired. So there are some things behind the scenes that we don't see as well. And one of those is player-coach relationships. But that being said, there are some things that I'm not liking that I'm seeing too. I'm not liking the constant change up with the lines. I know you have to make mid-game adjustments, but game to game, I think that you should try to go back to your original plan. And, the original lines that you had out of camp, barring injuries and all that. But so mid-game adjustments, I understand for sure. I think what we're seeing a lot is we're playing desperate hockey. And that's a testament to poor second periods and slow starts. You shouldn't have to be going balls to the wall in the third period and fighting and clawing for every point that you can possibly get. There needs to be some consistency, game to game, period to period, shift to shift. And you're seeing almost when we get a lead, the players start to get a little bit more comfortable, not necessarily shelling and going into a defensive scheme like we've seen with previous coaches, but just it seems like kind of drifting around a little bit lately. And I know that falls a lot on the players, but the players have to be held accountable too. And who does that? That's the coaching staff. So I don't know if it's just that Bear's not hard enough on these players, or if he's a pretty patient guy, but I think this is the year, and to Corey's point, it's a pretty important year for him if he wants to secure more years in Utah. I think this is something like a turning point, especially this 20-point mark, where you have to buckle down and you really have to start setting an example. And maybe that's scratching a player that's been in the lineup since day one that you wouldn't imagine scratching. I'm not saying scratch someone like Keller or anything, but using Keller as an example last night in the video room today and saying, hey, this is just something that we can't tolerate. This is your leader. This is a guy that we've chosen to lead you and a leader in points on the team. But, this is something that can't happen. Again, we don't know if this is happening behind the scenes or not. And, like we've been talking about, it is still early yet. I mean, we are 1-1 away from being in a wild card position again. So the seat is definitely getting warmer. My last little caveat on this, now I'm talking for 5 minutes straight, guys, but sorry about that. But there are some interesting coaching candidates out there that are currently free agents right now that do kind of pique my interest. And the front runner for me is Pete DeBoer. And you look at Pete DeBoer's track record. This is a guy that takes a team to the Stanley Cup Finals every other year. He had an unceremonious exit out of Dallas. And we don't really know what that was all about. I think it was a goaltending situation. But that's somebody I'm keeping my eye on if this trend continues, and someone I'd like to target.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think he's a veteran coach is a little bit overstated with Peter DeBoer. 3 straight conference finals appearances, multiple Stanley Cup final appearances. What do Jason Robertson, Miro Heiskanen, Wyatt Johnston, Thomas Harley, Logan Stankoven, Thomas Hurdle, Timo Meier, and there's more. What do all those guys have in common? They were all young players who came up under Pete DeBoer. And he's an OHL coach too, like Tourigny, right? Yeah. Kitchener Rangers, Mikhail Bodker, Nazem Kadri. Not too much older than Tourigny either, 6 years older. Right? Hey, maybe we get there's your Kadri and DeBoer.
Yeah.
That was a fun Kitchener Rangers team. I remember thinking Justin Azevedo was going to turn into something. Never quite did, but that was a fun Rangers team. They won the Mem Cup that year, I think, right? Yeah. So, Pete DeBoer's an interesting one. He's a bit of a controversial coach. It feels a little early in the rebuild for him, but to your point, Corey, Stankoven, Harley, Wyatt Johnston, these guys broke in recently with Dallas under DeBoer, found roles on the team, were able to excel and improve and set themselves up to sign big contracts and be meaningful star players in this league. So it's not as though he's a stifler of young talent or somebody who has no experience or tolerance or skill for developing young talent. So I think that is an overstated point. He would be obviously a credible potential replacement if they ended up moving off of Bear. It feels a little early for that kind of move to me because we're not a conference finals team and we wouldn't be under DeBoer. And to me, our 23 and under group is a lot more impressive than our 28 and older group. And that's not typical of a Pete DeBoer team. It's not to say he couldn't do it, but it's a little bit less of a proven concept under that coach. I think, you said some things that I agree with and don't agree with, Corey, about how we play and not liking how we play. I think I'm conflicted about how we play. It all boils down to execution. When the team is playing with speed. What this team is a quick transition team. This team is a neutral zone menace, a controlled zone entry menace, a rush offense menace. It's the most entertaining type of hockey that is played out there. The absolute pinnacle of this type of play is the Colorado Avalanche. We are basically parroting them and doing our best Colorado Avalanche impression. Unfortunately, our players are a lot younger. We don't have quite that level of veteran talent on the team, and our execution can struggle. When the execution does wane a little bit and we're attempting to play this way, it can be the most frustrating kind of hockey to watch. The polar opposite of that would be what we watched for years with great success, even a Western Conference Finals berth under Dave Tippett, who played an absolute left-wing lock, trapping, man-on-man, shut down, strangle you like a boa constrictor, stifle all creativity, chip it in, chip it out, dump and chase, grind you to death, veteran hockey player-led kind of system. Colorado is kind of the exact opposite of that. We're much closer to the Colorado end of the spectrum in the way that we play. But I don't think it has to be so binary. What I'd like to see is this team learn to adjust a little bit based on their level of execution. And I think Lawson Krause had a really undercover quote about this. They were interviewing him after the Islanders game where JJ Turka came on his line, and somebody in the scrum, I think it was either Merrifield or maybe it was our boy Brogan, asked Lawson Krause, hey, you and McBain and Carcone were having a lot of chemistry. You bring a different type of player and Paterka on your line. What conversations did you guys have with him, and how did you adjust to it? I think Krause had a really interesting quote. He said, we talked to him about if the play is there, obviously make the play, but otherwise we like to get pucks in on our line. We like to get pucks in. And I think that's something that's been a little bit missing in our top six. I see a lot of guys wanting to extend the play with little short passes rather than chipping in, wanting to go 2-on-1 or 1-on-2 or 1-on-3 rather than chipping it in. I'm not advocating that we become like a meat and potatoes dump and chase team. We're not built that way. But the thing is, you can use speed and skill to go get the puck back. You can get it in, and you can use your skating and your stick work and your angling and your IQ to go retrieve pucks. And I think that this team is too hesitant to give it away and go get it back. I don't see like chipping it in on a high percentage conservative play and living to fight another day, buying time for the team, buying time for a shift. I see a lot of turnovers at the blue line. Then you're rushing back through the neutral zone. You're on the back check. There's no time for a line change. You end up Hendman in your zone. You're not in good position to be a good outlet option for your D because you're trying to get too cute. Everybody's clogging the center of the ice. Nobody wants to go boards and out or chip it right over the opposing blue line just to clear it and live to fight another day. I think a lot of that is youth. The guys are too horned up for making breakaways. They really just want to spring each other for chances. They're just super over eager to generate rush offense that they are guilty of committing to low percentage decisions way too often, which in the first 10 games was incredible to watch. It was the most entertaining hockey I've ever seen as a fan of this franchise. In the last 10 games, you get to see the ugly flip side of that coin, which is poor execution and getting boat raced by teams you shouldn't be getting boat raced by. So
do you mind? I wanted to piggyback off of your point there, though. I think that it's great that Krause is being a leader in that sense, and knowing that just because that's that line's identity doesn't mean it has to be the entire team's identity. So I do feel
100%.
like there does need to be a little bit of accountability there. With goes back to Tourigny there. I don't necessarily see Paterka on that line for that reason. We need to play to his strengths, and he can be an up and down player, making those more high percentage plays. And then we can have a steady group in our third line and a shutdown group with our fourth line. And I just feel like we're not building enough chemistry with these guys just because we keep bouncing around. And I don't see Paterka as a fit on that line. But I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I thought you bring up a good point. And I think that does kind of fall back on Tourigny a little bit there.
I agree. It's a lack of a cohesive identity from line to
Right.
line and as a group, right? You don't have to have every line play the same way, to your point, but you need to have an identity, and every guy needs to have a role. In order for hockey players to flourish, they need that consistency. They need to have an expectation of what their role is and how they're going to play and how they're going to fit in with their line mates. And if they're in a blender, they get an identity crisis. You see a lack of confidence, and things can kind of snowball. So I agree with you that there is some accountability for the coaching staff there. And I'd like to see them working with these players on making those in-game adjustments on what's working and what's not. I do think that really is something that falls on coaches to some extent, to a pretty great extent, and even more so when the team is young and lacking in experience like this team is. They're going to need some direction on that, I think. And there's, to your point, we talked a little bit about some of the replacements out there. Pete DeBoer is one good option. I don't see a whole lot of other great options, which is another reason why I want to be a little bit more patient with Bear. The one guy whose name continues to have tons and tons of smoke around it with regard to Utah is John Cooper. And some cold water was poured on that this offseason when he signed an extension. But it was the weirdest extension I've ever seen of a high-profile coach. It was signed privately, without a big announcement, without a press conference. There's no clear picture of how long the extension is or what options there are for extensions. I don't know if he's got a club option, a coach option, a mutual option for additional years. I don't know when those years kick in or when those options would kick in. It's kind of a mystery box of situation when it comes to John Cooper's contract. So I do wonder if maybe some of that vague nature of his current contract situation is so that either he or the Lightning can keep their options open this summer without making it a distraction. Because to your point, Corey, lame duck coaching is not the norm in this league. Lame duck coaching can be a distraction and usually doesn't have very good results for the team. So maybe it's been kept intentionally vague as a little bit of a smokescreen for the Tampa Bay Lightning and John Cooper. I don't know. So just a little bit of a rumor mill thing, just a little bit log in the fire to keep the smoke going on the John Cooper thing. But something I thought was worth mentioning was he's the long rumored name here. And we thought maybe that was eliminated as a possibility last summer, but I'm not so sure.
Yeah. I thought, I'm sorry, Corey. I know you're.
Yeah, no. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I thought you were going Laviolette there, but go ahead, Corey.
Yeah, I don't know how much stock I put into that. It is a little odd how they announced that, and it would, if you want to play the conspiracy thing, it sort of lines up with Tourigny's contract potentially ending. But yeah, I don't know. And then you see all this stuff about Cooper potentially wanting like a VP of hockey ops role to go with the coaching, and we've seen that before, and I really don't want to go down that path. All hockey decisions should be made by Bill.
Yeah.
I'm with that. There. Yeah, he scares me a little bit because this is a Bill Armstrong podcast by far. Like we love Bill Armstrong. This is the cult of BA, friend of the show. I don't want any weird backdoor deals, backroom deals, I should say, coming into play here that jeopardize anything that Bill's building and his vision here. You did mention Peter Laviolette, Kenny. We brought him up on the show before. He obviously is longtime friends with Bill Armstrong, gave Bill Armstrong his post-playing opportunities when Bill Armstrong was on our show. You should listen to that podcast if you haven't yet. It's very evergreen. We heard so many wonderful old and new stories and some great stories from the road and some really incredible anecdotes and, how I built this sort of topics from Bill Armstrong. So it's a very evergreen episode. Go back and listen to it. You'll hear him mention Peter Laviolette quite a bit in that interview. Laviolette is available. I think with Laviolette, though, the idea of old school coach who wears thin quick and you can get a boost early and maybe get a bump and some success, but it's not more of a long-term thing. Some of the criticisms about DeBoer that maybe aren't quite as justified are probably a little bit more applicable to Peter Laviolette. He probably is more fairly criticized in that way than DeBoer. What do you think about that, Corey?
Yeah, it got pretty ugly last year in New York. You saw a lot of criticism from fans about favoritism for veterans, and he's got a Stanley Cup in Carolina, and he's had multiple runs to the finals with Nashville and who was the other team? Philadelphia. He took to the finals with Michael Leighton in net. So if you can get to the finals with him in net, but he's also had some pretty short stops recently that have kind of taken a little bit of the bloom off the rose, right? Was very short tenure in Washington and a very short tenure in New York as well. So now he's unemployed. So,
and not without controversy in Philadelphia too. That wasn't all sunshine and rainbows there. There was definitely some yin and yang with that experience. So to your point, the bloom may be off the rose a little bit there.
Yeah. And I want to emphasize, I just brought that up just because I thought that's the name that Trent was going to bring up. Cooper is definitely interesting. Got my tinfoil hat out for that one because it was kind of weird how that was announced or not announced. If you were to tell me right now, tomorrow you can wake up with a new coach and that new coach is Laviolette, or you can choose to stay with Tourigny, I'd stay with Tourigny. But Same. Just to kind of, I guess not, maybe put a bow on this conversation, I want to ask you guys both a question, and I'll give you my answer as well. What is your personal deadline? If we see the same play that we're seeing over the last handful of games, at what point in this season do you decide, okay, I'm ready for a coaching change? And Trent, I want to start with you.
I think my level of patience, my level of loyalty is dependent entirely on my options. I don't know that I'd really want to just name John Madden interim head coach for the rest of the season. I think that's kind of throwing the towel in on things. No offense to John Madden, who may be a wonderful head coach, may be just what we need, but it doesn't strike me as the kind of move that we would make. We don't know what's going to happen with some of the other situations around the league and who might come available. But if it's something where there's some mutual interest in, say, DeBoer as an example, and the team is still muddying along and losing momentum, if we continue to decline from, say, the current 94-point pace, or we dip below that to where we're pacing like 89 or something like that come January, I'd say as soon as then, I'd be willing to explore something if they really think DeBoer could be a good fit.
Yeah, and I should have prefaced that. Let's use that example. Say there's mutual interest in Utah and DeBoer. At what point would you, Corey, decide that, hey, we got to make this change?
Yeah, it's tricky, right? Because I think he's kind of the only available coach that I would want. I don't really want to do Laviolette. Gallant's gone to the KHL, so that's unlikely. I don't know who else is available right now. Saravelli was floating the idea that the Oilers could fire their coach, but I don't really want to scoop him up. So, if the current slide continues, it's going to be like, if you try and fix this in January to salvage it, playoffs probably aren't going to happen. So I would say the sooner the better. DeBoer is available. He's going to be expensive because he's still getting paid by Dallas, and he's available. He is going to be one of the assistants with Canada at the Olympics. So I would say, like, if the current slide continues, change it in, I think it's about a week away, American Thanksgiving. I'd hold my Canada Cup, will I say. You know what? If the current slide continues, I think you got to look at this as soon as next week.
Okay.
Yeah.
My answer, again, kind of right in the middle of you guys. I think that by the roster freeze come, I think that's December 19th. It's like usually
about a month from now. Yeah.
Yeah. Usually like a week or so before Christmas. I'd say that approaching the roster freeze, if we're still on a skid, if we're still hovering around 500, if we're still, kind of on the outside looking in of a wild card spot, I think that's where I would decide to make a coaching change. And I'm with you, Trent. I don't like the interim idea. I think they seldomly work out. There are
Has
times
John
where
Madden ever been a head coach before?
no, I don't think so. And if he was probably interim. But I think that does more damage to a locker room than not, unless you have like this coach, like premier coach waiting in the wings. And I don't think that we have anybody on our bench that fits that role. So I would say if our only option's riding out an interim, then no. If we have something lined up like St. Louis did when they got rid of Berube and hired Montgomery within 24 hours, then I would say that I would probably do that around the roster freeze.
Is there any urgency where, let's say, you don't make a change and another team, maybe Toronto, fires Berube and hires Pete DeBoer, so he's no longer available, and then still continues to slide here in Utah? What do you do at that point? Do you just get to the end of the season and figure it out in the summer?
Yep, I ride it out. I don't want Berube. I mean, like I don't want. There's few coaches that I think are on the hot seat in the NHL right now that I would trade straight up for Tourigny. In fact, I don't really know of anybody offhand on teams that are sliding. Not if another coach popped up on a winning team, of course that would be a different story. But I think you just ride it out. If DeBoer gets hired this season, scratch and claw, try to make the playoffs, and then it kind of rests on Tourigny's shoulders at that point, entering into a contract year.
Yeah, I mean, the last two things I would say, I do think Bill Armstrong probably owes Tourigny a trade before he fires him, and then if you bring in somebody and it's still not working, then maybe at that point.
Yeah. That's fair.
Then, to me, the biggest indication of when you need a coaching change is when every player or almost every player is playing poorly, and I think we're pretty close to that now. Like, can you name 5 players? Like a quarter of the roster is playing well right now, and 2 of them are probably Michael Carcone and Nick DeSimone, who are fringe NHLers at best.
Yamamoto.
So the last 10 games, our leading scorer is Mikhail Sergachev with 1 goal and 6 assists, followed by JJ Peterka with 5 goals and 1 assist for 6 points. Then you've got Nick Schmaltz with 3 goals and 3 assists for 6 points. Same for Lawson Krause in the last 10 games. So he's been playing well during this period of time. Clayton Keller also 3 and 3 for 6. And you've got Logan Cooley with 2 and 3 for 5 and 10. John Marino has 0 goals, but 5 assists in those 10 games. And then Dylan Gunther has 4 points in the last 10 games, 3 goals, 1 assist. One of those goals being kind of a trash time goal. So yeah, it's definitely strugglesville from a production standpoint, even for the top players over the last 10 games. Nobody's really having wild success. Even Mikhail Sergachev with the 7 points, that's great. Those are all assists, and some of them are a bit dubious. He's been good. He's also had some moments where he's been a little bit questionable. I wouldn't say that he's like excelling over the last 10 games by any means. I'd say that if anybody is, it's probably Peterka and Schmaltz, and even Schmaltz has cooled down from the first 10. So
no interest in signing him. We need a different mix in the top 6.
I don't think there's any chance that Schmaltz gets re-signed. I think he's definitely going to the market. Look at next year's free agency class.
Right. He might hit $10 million.
Yeah. There's no way.
He might be the biggest name out there come next summer. Yeah, somebody's going to cash in with an 8-year deal that I don't want to give him. And
buyer beware.
Congrats to him, man. I hope he factors in the buyout into his budget. But anyway,
I think it's him and Panarin, right? They're kind of leading the class, and I think that Schmaltz is more appealing than Panarin at this point, which is kind of scary to say. But
quite a bit.
Yeah, but Panarin's going to go to the Rangers, the Islanders, the Panthers, the Lightning, or the Blackhawks, and that's it. You know what I mean? Like he's not signing with Minnesota or like St. Louis or
Utah.
Or Utah. So I wouldn't. He's a little bit of a special case. He'll have a small list. I think Nick Schmaltz is in a good position to put an open for business sign up and say, hey, highest bidder wins. Let's see what you guys have. Now we talked a little bit about some of the problems facing the team. We talked a lot about coaching. Another issue that's not getting quite as much attention until pretty recently, but
It
has
should.
been somewhat of an issue all year, has been the goaltending. The team's overall save percentage is bottom 5 in the league, which isn't great. When you look at a little bit more of the advanced metrics, specifically with Karel Vejmelka, the starter, his goals saved above expected is ranked 30th in the league among goalies. I didn't adjust these for games played. So keep in mind, there are some guys ahead of him that have like one really good start or whatever. So you can toss a few of those out. So this may seem a little bit worse than it actually is, but nonetheless, I assure you it still ranks towards the bottom of all starters in every one of these categories. Percentage of goals saved above average, 47th. Save percentage above expected, 47th. Save percentage on shots on goal, 58th. Goals against better than expected, 47th. And wins above replacement, 45th in the league. Now, when you take these same categories, and I won't read them all again, for last season, what you get in terms of the delta for rank change, the net rank change for him, when you look at these 25-26 numbers versus last season, it's a 12 ranking drop, a 19 ranking drop, a 20 ranking drop, a 28 ranking drop, and an 18 ranking drop for Karel Vejmelka, who is not performing to the level that he was last year statistically. And I think it's more than just the numbers. I think also that even if you didn't look up the stats and find them very surprising, I don't think there's many people out there making the case that he's been stellar or been saving the team or stealing games that they shouldn't otherwise have won, which was the case last season regularly. So I think Veggie is in a little bit of strugglesville, and I don't think Vitek Vanacek is doing a whole lot better than he is. I think the goaltending is a group that is facing some of the fewest shots on goal in the league, and it has one of the lowest save percentages in the league as well. There isn't help in the AHL here. That Matt Villalta and Jackson Stauber are not going to be NHL starters that save the day. Michael Robel is in college and is a long ways away if he ever gets there. Melker Thielen is over in Sweden. He's not coming over to save the day. And again, he's probably on an even longer path than Michael Robel. So we have the goalies that we're probably going to stick with, save for a trade. The answer will either come from these two guys or it will come externally from the organization. Thoughts on goaltending, guys? What do you think, Kenny?
I'm not impressed. And you could probably track my comments back to early on in the summer and before the trade deadline last year that I do feel like we needed to shore up the goaltending. Listen, I'm a big fan of Karel Vejmelka. Seems like a great guy. I love when he gets fired up. I love some of his highlights are some of the best goaltending saves I've seen ever. He's like a Dominic Hasek out there flopping around sometimes. That being said, ever since his first season with the Coyotes, which he was playing on an AHL team at that time, there was just something that I just had a hard time thinking like this guy is going to be a legitimate starter in the league. And I said something earlier on in the podcast, and we kind of gave it flowers, but I also have an issue with it as well. And I'm kind of circling back to Nick Schmaltz here, though. But there's something I have an issue with in sports in general, and that's players that bust their ass in the final year of their contract because they know they're trying to secure a bag for the next year. To me, that bothers me. If you're capable of this play all the time, why are you not doing it years prior? Why is it that you got to wait until you're faced with, oh man, I don't know if I have a job next year, that you play your best? And it's probably human nature. I've probably done it myself, right? But I have an issue with it as a fan of this team. And we might have seen a little bit of that with Karel Vejmelka last year. And now that he's secured another 5-year deal,
Are we starting to see him come back down to reality? Maybe does he feel comfortable as the starter of this team for the next 5 years? I don't know. It's all speculation on my part, but it's something that I don't necessarily see. Like if we make the playoffs this year, and we're head to head with Colorado or whatever, name the team. Do I trust that our goaltending is going to be one of the strengths in any of the series that we would be in the playoffs? And I don't see it. I'm with you with Vitek Vanacek. I just, they're solid, but are they a playoff goaltending tandem? I don't see it at all. And it's kind of scaring me to the point where I think that we went from a 1A, 1B situation for the longest time in Arizona and arguably in Utah with Ingram and Vejmelka. So now I just feel like we got 2 1B goalies. And I think that if there's not a turnaround here, then we're going to start drumming up some names in the rumor mill again. And maybe if Boston comes back down to earth, we circle back to Swayman or something along those lines. But I do think that goaltending this year and for the near future is not one of the strong points of this team.
Yeah, you want to see Vejmelka be a lot better. We made him a $5 million goalie, and we're not seeing that this season. There was some discussion on the Discord earlier, the Clean Hits Discord, of what if you get UPL out of Buffalo? Buffalo's got a lot of goalies right now. He's struggled, but I mean, he's on the Sabres. So do you consider that? I think he's 26, so I think he's right around the same age as Veggie, maybe a little younger. Same salary. I don't think it'd be a 1-for-1. I think Veggie would probably stay and you would run a tandem of the two. But it's interesting.
And just for clarification, for anybody that doesn't know who UPL is, it's Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. He's got one of the coolest names, but
yeah,
I just wanted to clarify that just in case. But it's an interesting name. I don't know if it's somebody that I'm like, hey, our savior's arrived. But I mean, I guess Ullmark kind of was seen as a diamond in the rough there and turned into a starter. I don't know. Goaltending is tricky because most goaltenders that are elite at their craft have been drafted and developed by their team.
I do still wonder if we put in a claim when Colton Ellis was on waivers earlier this year and got claimed by Buffalo. So they were ahead on the waiver priority. Colton Ellis was somebody who was drafted by Bill Armstrong in St. Louis. Yeah. He's been looking for this goalie of the future forever. I don't know if Colton Ellis is going to be a future Vezina winner, but it's some hope, and it's at least a bridge between what we have now and with the college goalie coming, right? We don't really have anything in that gap. So,
and would UPL have an asset attached? He's got a pretty big contract. He makes almost as much as Veggie.
Does he really?
What if we send back something? What if I said this on the Discord earlier too? If Olli Määttä can't skate anymore, that's a problem contract.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's
he's signed for 2 more years after this year, and he's way too expensive to be a 7th defenseman. So
yeah, I agree. I mean, and he's getting outshined by players like Nick DeSimone, which no offense to Nick DeSimone, I liked that pickup last year too. I would say that
Schwab is our secret weapon there too. Right?
Yeah,
so Karel Vejmelka was nobody had ever heard of him. He came out of absolutely nowhere and stole that starter job. Then we claimed Connor Ingram on waivers, who was seen as like his last shot. Not much there. He cleared waivers the year before. And then he comes in and has a resurgence and takes Vejmelka's job. And it's not until he has some unfortunate off-ice issues, with mental health hit, and he ends up in the player assistance program that Vejmelka has a resurgence and has a big season. So we do have a little bit of a goalie whisperer in Corey Schwab, who's been responsible for some pretty major reclamation projects going all the way back to Mike Smith, who was kind of on his last legs in Dallas and Tampa, and then got resuscitated to be a top goalie in the league. Then he did it again with Darcy Kemper, who ended up winning a Stanley Cup and being a really good goalie in this league. And then Aiden Hill is another name.
What about Devin Dubnyk?
Yes, right. He tends to have good success with these big goalies who have unrealized talent. And UPL certainly fits the bill. The difference there is none of those guys came in with giant price tags. So that's a little bit of out of our typical formula for these reclamations.
I think there's some overlap there between Schwab and Sean Burke, but Schwab still gets credit for some of those other guys later in the list.
Kemper, Hill, Vejmelka,
Yeah.
and Ingram. Yeah.
But still a hell of a list. I said earlier in the podcast, I think this season's turning into a season that's answering some questions. Barrett Hayton, is he a number 2 center? No. Is Karl Vejmelka a starting goalie? Probably not. Maybe he's a 1A, 1B, and you do run a tandem, and tandem does seem to be the thing in the NHL nowadays. But, I mean, even for tandem, he needs to be a lot better. I don't really care about Vanacek. Vanacek is stopgap backup goalie, and if he doesn't work out and we do bring in someone, just put him on waivers. Who cares? But Vejmelka does need to be better.
Yeah, and I think Vejmelka will be better, and I think he can be a starter. The question is he a starter on a playoff team? And is he a starter on a playoff team that wins rounds? That's the thing that gives me a little bit of pause. Yeah.
This is also like by far the best decor he's played behind. Like this isn't behind Troy Stecher and Josh Brown and Yusuf Alamaki anymore. Like this is legitimate NHL defenseman, and his numbers have not improved.
No. And I do think, to your point, Corey, that the tandem situation is definitely the trend that's taken over in this league. But there's typically a clear-cut number 1 guy and a really solid, like, I can fill in if this guy goes down for 10 games. And I just don't see I can't see Vanacek stepping in the case of an injury and keeping this team afloat. And I also just don't see I don't see the $5 million goalie in Vejmelka this year. And I know a lot of our Clean Hits Discord are going to be a little upset with us, and maybe some of the veggie crew, the veggie heads on X are going to be a little upset with us. But we do have to talk facts. And as much as we like the player, as much as we want to see him turn it around here and be our number 1 guy, there's definitely a huge question mark in that. And it's not only seen by us, it's, right around the draft, there was whispers that we were looking at Sorokin in New York. If I'm not mistaken, there was some whispers that Utah was sniffing around Joel Holford before he resigned in St. Louis. So there's definitely a desire, it seems, keeping your ear to the ground to see if another goaltender arises. So something.
Well, we still have that the practice goalie, right? The one on wheels. That friend of the show, Cole Bagley, tweeted out the other day. The goalie on the wheels. And hey, at least with wheel goalie, he's not going to be 7 feet out of his crease in overtime. So worth a shot at this point. I mean, both goalies sub 900. So we don't allow many shots, right? So
no.
There's a
couple weeks coming up. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. A lot is going to become clearer and clearer as the season goes on. We've got, I said we had a lot to talk about on this show. Kenny, I wanted to give a little bit of an update on one of our top prospects as we're talking about concerns and potential issues and unknowns. I've got a little bit of an update that I wanted to close us out with. I know that you had some other obligations time-wise. I don't know if you want to stick around for this one.
Yeah, I'd love to. I love Trent nuggets, especially about prospects. Trent is the prospect whisperer, or you know what I mean. He's our guy, so I don't want to miss this.
So Caleb Desnoyers, we moved up and won the lottery and picked 4th overall. A prospect I was over the moon to get, somebody who had, if you count his stellar playoffs, had 114 points in 75 QMJHL games played last season. He did so with some wrist issues that ended up getting cleaned up with surgery over the offseason, which has limited the number of games he's played. He came back way ahead of schedule, alarmingly so, in Moncton. He ended up getting injured again in his first game back, and a bit of a scary injury where he looked very shaken up after a hit late in the game. He's currently got just 4 points in 7 games, so it's way off his pace last season. He's got just a single goal. And I saw some folks getting a little bit nervous about what that could mean. He came back recently, again, ahead of schedule. I caught his games this weekend. The big one to talk about would be the one against Halifax. That's the team he got injured against. So this was kind of Desnoyers' revenge game. He didn't put up huge numbers. It wasn't a 4-point night for him or anything like that. So I wanted to check the tape and see what was actually going on the ice and go beyond the box score a little bit. And what I saw from Desnoyers against Halifax was extremely heartening to me. He looked healthy. He looked absolutely nasty, just fearless, physical, violent, right? He was engaged in all 3 zones. He was playing with an edge. He was chippy. He was full of swagger. He was finishing his checks. He was crashing the net, mixing it up after whistles, plenty of little cheap shots, stick work, cross checks, slashes after the whistles, some discipline issues. He was in the box a bit.
Let's go.
So he did drive the play a ton in this game. He was aggressive on the forecheck, on the back check. He was beating defenders 1-on-1, 1-on-2, getting clean zone entries, creating a lot of chances that his line mates couldn't finish. He certainly could have ended up with a lot more points in this game because his dishes were clean. Ultra aggressive on the PK, generating high-end shorthanded chances, taking some penalties that were a little borderline, leaving his team shorthanded though, especially on one 2-man advantage on the PK, which led to a goal by the other team. But the way he was supporting his teammates and his IQ really popped. His positioning and smarts and just being a coach's dream was what got me most excited about this player last season, not just the offensive production. He was constantly available as an outlet, reading when to dive in and create numbers or when to pop into space and be a safety valve, helping his team escape pressure. They spent most of the night killing penalties. There was a lot of discipline issues in the game, but he kept them in the fight by being such a good support player, such a high IQ player. I think whoever ends up coaching him in the NHL is going to absolutely love this guy. In the 3-on-3 OT, he was an absolute force. He would not turn the puck over. If the puck got turned over, he was getting it back. He was stripping pucks, regaining possession. So often in 3-on-3, a team gets it, you can't get it back. That's not the case with Caleb Desnoyers on the ice. That was his puck. He was going to have it. He generated multiple dangerous looks in the OT, and he did cap it all off by burying the shootout winner and making sure Moncton left with 2 points. So really great to see. The motor, the speed, the physicality, the compete, the confidence, it was all there despite the injuries. He wasn't tentative in any way. He was driving play, creating chances. The discipline was an issue for him and the whole team. But I think that edge is more of a feature than it is a bug. Really would rather tame that tiger than paint those stripes on that pussycat. So I'm glad that we've got a lion in Moncton, a wildcat that we're going to have to tame a little bit. But for a guy coming off of wrist surgery and that other scary looking injury, he really looked like himself again, despite the production absence in the box score. So I was really, really heartened by what I saw from Desnoyers over the weekend.
Now, can I ask you a question? Because you've got your finger on the pulse much better than a lot of us do. Moncton, I know, is a good organization. Something you said a couple times kind of scared me a little bit. And I'm sure that Utah's doctors have to be involved in this too. But it does kind of sound like he did come back early from not only wrist surgery, and I don't want to even say the C word, but his second injury did look like it rattled him a little bit. Do you know offhand, do Utah doctors get involved in the time that he should be sitting out for full recovery, or is Moncton just kind of rushing this guy back in the lineup? Are they maybe jumping ahead and not letting him recover as much, or do you see any of that?
So what I can say, short answer, I don't know. But I don't know definitively, but what I can say in the long answer is Moncton is seen as a first-rate organization.
Yeah.
They are not afraid to spend. They're not afraid to invest resources. It's highly lauded as one of the best organizations in the CHL. They have a great head coach, a great ownership group, great management. It's a good development situation for him. They're the only game in town. They don't seem like the type of organization that would act so short-sightedly or would succumb to pressure for gate reasons or anything like that. They've not been their typical dominant selves in the league. They're kind of middle of the pack. I think that's largely because they haven't had Caleb Desnoyers in the lineup. I expect bigger things from them. I've heard some whispers and reassurances that they did actually use some caution with him more than I had feared, that he had been on the ice working out and recovering, and that his early timeline was a credit to his commitment to recovery more so than it was a red flag about the organization's handling of the player. My concerns about him coming back early were less that Moncton was being irresponsible and more that Caleb Desnoyers would not be denied, and maybe he's pushing himself a little too hard. He did have those wrist injuries all throughout his dominant playoff performance with Moncton last year. So I'm wondering, like, is this just a kid who won't take no for an answer? And could this lead to long-term problems down the road? That possibility remains to be seen, but I would say that with him being in Moncton, I'm more optimistic than I would if he was playing for some organizations that have less stellar reputations.
So you do feel our assets safe in the hands of Moncton, and that it's more a testament to him being an absolute dog, a la like Jacob Chikrin, which I don't know if you guys remember, his timelines for injuries were always beaten by Jacob Chikrin's tenacity in getting in the gym and making sure that he wasn't going to be denied. So if that's the case, I'm much more reassured, because that means that we do absolutely have a killer on our hands. And I'd much rather have somebody that is, again, like you said, doesn't take no for an answer. But it did make me a little concerned. I just want to make sure that somebody that we value very highly in this organization is not being put in a position where he could compromise his future.
Well, I can't be sure. I can't make sure, but I can be assured, and I am assured by the, or reassured, I should say, by the quality of the organization that he's in. Not for nothing, the kid hasn't signed an ELC, so he does maintain his NCAA eligibility. He's going to play a short season here in Moncton. And I'm sure that the top college programs, every single one of them would be falling all over themselves to add this player. He is definitely on the short list for Team Canada. Not having played has hurt him. I'm sure his chances. They're not running an evaluation camp this year. They're just going to select the team. So that's a little bit different and unusual, and probably doesn't work in his favor. But he's weird. He's got quite a history for Team Canada being a big producer. So if I'm them, there's no way I'm going to that tournament without him at the World Juniors. So I think we'll see a lot about what Caleb Desnoyers is all about in that tournament. And I think that'll, in some ways, influence what his future looks like next season, whether that's playing for Utah, whether that's playing in Tucson with the new underage player exception rule that goes into place next season, or whether he's got every top college program offering him all the NIL money to come feature for them as a top tier recruit. So I think every option that's at his disposal is a good one. And I can't wait to see what happens with this player.
And Corey, I don't mean to keep talking, but I do have to go. And I wanted to ask one more clarifying question here. Actually kind of a two-parter. One, I think I know where your head's at with this. You see him as more going pro next year than not, right? I mean, I think that's what we've talked about in the past, that he's more on pace of potentially being one of the exceptions to the AHL next year, or just making the straight jump to Utah. Because initially I was almost hoping he would join the NCAA this year, but then it sounded like there was a few teams that were interested in having him. But do you see a good possibility that's part of his next year's plans, is to not be a part of the Roadrunners or the Mammoth?
Did you ask Corey or me?
You. I was saying, Corey, I felt bad because I kept talking and I was asking you.
I thought you left him speechless.
Yeah, I know. I was like, man, I finally broke him.
It wouldn't be a Clean Hits hockey podcast without at least one awkward dead air pause. So I'm glad we were able to get that figured out.
I appreciated the eye contact, though. It was nice.
Yeah, I think I thought you said Corey. Sorry. I think that the NCAA probably was a realistic opportunity for him, but I think having the off-season shortening surgery, that meant that it was going to be a late start, and with colleges starting up pretty early in the fall, it probably didn't make a whole lot of sense for him to make that switch and do his rehab in an unknown situation. So I think it made more sense for him to go back to Moncton this year. As far as next year goes, I think we're going to have to see how the season plays out. If he's an absolutely dominant force for the rest of the season, if he's a star for Team Canada at the World Juniors, if he looks like a total world beater, he has the details in his game. He has the frame. He has the drive and the fire to be a pro player next year. I wouldn't be worried about him, but he is still a skinny kid. And I don't think that the NCAA would be a waste of his time by any stretch of the imagination. I think that would be a good development path for him. But he may show us some signs here in the late stages of the season that won't be a necessary stop for him. Or it could be that the team and the player decide that that's the perfect place for him. What Utah does with the roster probably has some bearing on that as well. If they were to add somebody like Ryan O'Reilly, who you brought up earlier, maybe both sides feel a little bit less inclined for him to come in and play on the third or fourth line to start out. And they feel like they have a little bit of time to slow cook him. And that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world either.
Okay. And I lied. Corey, I have a question for you now, and then I got to really jam. I keep pushing this, but this is interesting. To Trent's point, there is the exception of one of your prospects being chosen to join the AHL at a younger age. But I've also been hearing whispers, and I'm hoping that you might be hearing the same thing, that the teams are also pushing back on this and saying that there should absolutely be more than one spot available, more than one exception. And I think it was Friedman that had mentioned that he wouldn't be surprised if this went back to the negotiating table, and that there was upwards of potentially 3 slots for exceptions. I didn't know if you heard anything about that, because I think it would be really hard for us to choose a player right now. I mean, I think ultimately, you've got Tej, you've got Cole, you've got Caleb, you've got
Tej and Cole are eligible.
Yeah, they're eligible.
So
that's right.
They'd be eligible either way. So
that's true.
It's
completely
for this club. It's probably Caleb or nobody would be my guess. Unless something crazy happens at the draft, we missed by 1 point, win the lottery again or something like this, and there's some kid in the top 10 that is clearly too good for junior. I don't know who in this draft class would be that kid, but probably Caleb is our main concern as far as that exception rule is concerned. I don't think that Sinichka or anybody else is really a consideration for that spot.
So I guess that makes my question a little less interesting, but I wanted to hear what your thoughts were on that, Corey.
Well, I don't really know how it works for CHL teams too. So this is only for 19-year-olds, right? And then what if you have multiple 19-year-olds who can go to the AHL because of this rule? Like you're screwed, right? You need those players for ticket sales to win games, like the London Knights or something like that, who always are dominant. What if you lose like 3 19-year-olds? What if you lose your whole first line because they're in the AHL?
I guess that makes sense why they want to bring in the USHL. Yeah.
And I
think a lot of teams would probably worry about damaging the relationship that they have with their that CHL team as well. But
yeah,
I don't
think
know. I heard
the CHL is going to get younger, and that's okay. I think you'll probably see their exceptional age drop in the CHL too. So I think you're just going to see a much younger CHL than we're accustomed to, and a much younger NCAA than we're accustomed to, and maybe a much younger AHL than we're accustomed to. And we've all seen the NHL get younger and younger too. So I think the whole game is just shifting to be a younger game, and I think that's probably okay. And let's face it, if you're the Moose Jaw Warriors and you're the only game in town, if the average age of your team goes from 19 and a half to 18 and a half because of this, your gate's probably not going to suffer too badly from it.
You're going to see Trent's son playing for Moncton next year. And they're like, we wanted to go younger. And we had to go younger, which I guess is
a conversation for another day, but maybe leave you guys something to chew on is there's also talks in raising the draft age again. So sounds like there's a weird dynamic of trying to get younger in one spot and then waiting for a player to be more mature before you gamble your entire future on them. So, but with that, I'll leave you guys to your own devices here, and I got to go get my kid a haircut. So appreciate you fellas, and I can't wait to listen to the rest of the episode.
All right, Kenny, go get his ears lowered, buddy. Get every one of them hairs cut. All right. And you know what? With that, I don't have a whole lot left to add. Corey, are you good to sign off? Is there anything you wanted to leave us with?
No, it just left me with an idea of, I think, and you two would especially love this, a next clean hit shirt with a maple leaf and then pictures of Caleb and Tej and Cole. I think that'd be a hot seller. And then on the back, you could list like all of Canada's World Junior golds.
Absolutely not. See you later, folks.
I'm running the game now.